Hi everyone, my name is Zachary Caceres, and I recently started work with a new nonprofit called Free Cities. Now, Free Cities is a development project that comes from an increasing realization by economists and also world leaders that institutions, things like legal rules and regulations, are a primary determinant of economic development. This is because institutions create the environment under which people act. They determine what kinds of actions are prohibited, what kinds of actions pay off, what kinds of actions are even feasible. And one of the great tragedies of the developing world is that nations are ridden with institutions that massively raise the cost of starting or growing a business. Now, perversely, this actually works to the benefit of the well-connected, the already well-established, or the politically well-connected, but it's an almost insurmountable barrier to a poor entrepreneur. And what Free Cities is seeking to do is to bring better institutions to the developing world to allow these entrepreneurs to reach their full potential. Now, the fundamental idea behind Free Cities is not especially new. This is an image of Dubai in the early 90s. It's a rather unattractive site. Very few people live here. There's almost no commerce. Now, this is the same street. You can see the buildings down there in the corner. Only about 10 years later. And obviously, the difference is night and day. And the image itself is a testament to the power of changing institutions, because much of this growth came from a few semi-independent zones in Dubai that run different legal rules, in other words, different institutions, from the surrounding area. Now, I'm sure some of you are asking, what exactly is so progressive about Dubai? And you're right. But if I could stress one thing most of all this evening, it's that Dubai's model need not have Dubai's reputation. In particular, the innovative turn in Free Cities is in taking this kind of model and then turning it towards a radically new end, namely humanitarianism. Now, imagine if an NGO like the Jane Goodall Institute, which looks to save the chimpanzees from extinction, to stop the destruction of the rainforest, had their own Dubai. Now, what I mean is in the same way that a New York City block can be rezoned from commercial to residential, uninhabited, unused land in areas where chimpanzees are most threatened could be zoned for the Jane Goodall Institute to run better legal institutions, more conducive to entrepreneurship, and tailored to local conditions. Now, two big things would happen as a result. One is that people living in these regions would have a good alternative and a strong incentive to come and take advantage of these rules, to build businesses, to improve themselves, and to come and send their children to school and lead a better life. But more than that, it would take pressure off of the rainforest by bringing people out of the rainforest, where they would stop cutting down trees for firewood or hunting chimpanzees for bushmeat, which are some of the major reasons why chimpanzees risk extinction. But indeed, it's much bigger than this, because when you rezone a New York City block, the land itself, the value of the land, can increase by 10 or 100 times over. These gains can be massive. So the same principle applies to a free city. So using that same principle, what you have is this massive increase in land, in land values, by simply changing these rules. Now, what a free city can do is take this wealth and then use it to finance the humanitarian endeavor towards which the free city is being put. So in our hypothetical Jane Goodall free city, what this would go towards is reforestation, chimpanzee habitats, research, things of this nature. So let me put some magnitudes to this to put it in perspective. This is a picture of the Dubai International Financial Center. It's a very small zone, one of the ones I mentioned earlier. It's only about 100 acres, far smaller than the average American farm. You can see the whole thing more or less right in this image. If the Jane Goodall Institute or another NGO had a 1% dividend from the Dubai International Financial Center, they would have an additional $30 million every year to spend on reforestation or chimpanzee habitats or research or what have you. So I think this model is very powerful and a very powerful means of financing humanitarianism. But of course, this means that with 100 acres of uninhabited land, unused, near valueless, and a 1% dividend, we could quadruple the operating budget of an NGO like the Jane Goodall Institute. But the model is extremely scalable. Another free city has been proposed as a women's empowerment free city, in this case providing a legal toolkit to entrepreneurs like this woman to better build her business, to better provide for herself and her family. And in this case, the gains to the land value would go directly to financing women's initiatives. And the same could be said for Transfair, which is a fair trade certification organization, which could operate a Transfair fair trade free city. In this case, all commerce in such a place would be certified as meeting fair trade standards. Now, there are literally millions and millions of acres all throughout the developing world of uninhabited, unused, near valueless land. Any of this could be turned and zoned into free cities, limited only by our imagination and finding humanitarian endeavors that could use this model. So I think as NYU students, and especially as students in Gallatin, we should be bold and imaginative enough to consider an idea, a radical idea like free cities. In fact, it's gaining increasing attention around the world in places from Mexico to Estonia, and indeed Honduras recently amended their constitution to allow the possibility of such places to be created. Moreover, bringing better rules to the developing world is not just about GDP or income or any of these abstract statistical ideas. It's about breaking down entrepreneurial barriers, which are also emotional barriers. And they're emotional barriers to the feelings of dignity and self-command and accomplishment that come with being able to realize your goals. So I think we can see in an idea like free cities something especially pertinent to our generation. We're a very tolerant generation. We revel in diversity and pluralism and freedom of association and a willingness to be an individual. And so I think we can see not just a powerful means of humanitarian uplift in free cities, but an inspiring image of the kind of world that we could build for the 21st century as the 21st century generation. One in which we unleash the creative powers of free people, rich and poor, all over the world. Thank you.